today. And I'd like to welcome Russell and thank you for joining me here today to tackle an issue that is of deep concern to all Kiwis. Power prices are out of control and New Zealanders are being ripped off. This can't go on. It's time to bring power bills down for New Zealand families. And that's what a government I will lead will do. People are working hard, but they're not getting ahead. Many families with young children tell me that they often can't afford to turn on the heating. And a woman in Greypower I spoke to the other day said that she should be kicking back at her age rather than being worried about whether she can turn on the electric blanket or not. I don't want people risking their health or getting a hit in the back pocket for sky-high power prices anymore. That's why I'm announcing today that Labour will bring down power prices by up to $330 a year, put a lid on future price rises, lower costs for businesses, give our economy a $450 million boost, and create 5,000 jobs. We'll do this by creating a new agency called New Zealand Power to act as a single buyer of wholesale electricity. For too long, power companies have been making super profits off the backs of New Zealanders. Our power should be amongst the cheapest in the world because 2/3 of it comes from hydro, from free water and dams that have already been paid off. But instead, prices in New Zealand are increasing faster than many other countries. The average household power bill, accounting for inflation, has gone up by more than $770 a year over the past 15 years. And we can't go on this way. So rather than paying the power companies the same high price for all their electricity, regardless of how much it costs for them to produce it, we'll introduce a fairer pricing system. It means companies will still get a fair return, but families will get a fair go. As Prime Minister, I'll put a stop to super profits and pass those savings on to Kiwis. Our policy will cut the nation's power bill by up to $700 million a year. It will cost the Crown net between $60 and $90 million. It's a small price to pay when 1.7 million Kiwi households will benefit. We'll cover the cost within the current budgeted allocations for new spending, and we'll stay on track to reach surplus by 2014-2015. This policy is likely to have an impact on share prices. That's why I've written to the board of Mighty River Power and shareholding ministers asking them to use their powers to issue a supplementary disclosure. This will allow Kiwis who have applied for shares since Monday to reconsider. But I want to be clear about one thing. People can choose to buy shares, but they don't have a choice about buying power. We acknowledge that this isn't a new problem, but that's no excuse for just giving up. The last Labour government wasn't able to go far enough. Under my leadership, the next one will. Thank you. I'll now ask David to the podium to just run through some of the details.
Thanks, David. Welcome, everyone. The relentless rise in electricity prices has to be brought under control. The evidence is clear. This graph shows that since National's Bradford reforms in the late 1990s, bills for residential customers have been increasing much faster than for others. In fact, residential bills have gone up more than twice as fast as inflation. These runaway prices have opened up an enormous gulf between what industry and homeowners pay. According to the International Energy Agency, that gap is the second highest on the world. That's IEA data. There's no logical reason for the gap to be this big. Prices have grown faster than in many other countries, despite the fact that we have an abundance of low-cost renewable generation. Look at the comparison with the USA, Canada and the UK. New Zealand prices have tripled since 1990. The others have gone up by much less. The highest is less than 50%. So what's happening is clearly unfair to consumers and undermines the competitiveness of our economy. When markets are not truly competitive, excessive profits are extracted. There's no moral authority for relying upon markets to control price when they're not competitive. They misallocate resource within the economy and they're predatory of consumers, Kiwis. Now there's considerable evidence that the electricity market is not competitive, especially for residential customers. One, the huge gap between industrial and residential prices. Lines charges don't explain the difference. Two, in 2009, a report from internationally recognised USA expert Frank Wodak concluded that the four big generators had extracted super profits totaling $4.3 billion over a matter of years. Three, consumers in centres close to generation sometimes pay higher prices for their electricity than those more distant. Four, the forced sale of half of the Waitaki dams from Meridian to Genesis, using the physical resources less efficiently in an attempt to achieve a competitive market, was ridiculed by many, and it showed how uncompetitive the market is. 5. Carbon pricing was used as a reason to increase electricity prices, yet the collapse of carbon prices to close to zero saw no corresponding decrease. 6. Following the Bradford reforms, retailing became concentrated in companies owned by major generators, and it still is. 7. The lack of restraint shown in $1 million salaries and director fee hikes is further evidence. So despite New Zealand being rich in low-cost renewable electricity, consumers benefit less and less. It's not just inadequate competition. The actual cost of generating most of our electricity is not what drives the price. Currently, electricity is traded in a spot market where every half hour the price is set by the generator who supplies the most expensive electricity. That price is then paid to every generator who supplies electricity, no matter how much it costs them to actually generate it. In most cases, electricity now sells for many times more than it costs to generate. The current system has led to huge profits for older hydro plant using a public resource, water. The value of that has been capitalised by the generators into their constantly revalued balance sheets. It's wrong. What Labour will do? Well, it's time to call a halt to national so-called Bradford reforms. They failed. Remember, he promised lower prices. Let's not forget that. The answer doesn't lie in increasing industrial tariffs or fiddling with market rules. We have to break the pricing model. That's what Labour will do. We'll dump the current model and we'll introduce a fairer pricing system where each generator will be paid the actual cost of generation and a fair return on their capital. A new independent Crown entity, New Zealand Power, will act as a single buyer of wholesale electricity with the power to set prices. Many states in the USA, where the regulated utility model is commonly used, as well as large economies like Brazil and South Africa, operate similar systems. New Zealand Power will keep prices at fair and predictable levels. There will still be a wholesale call for electricity, and the price will still vary regionally, reflecting transmission costs and lines losses. New Zealand Power will on-sell electricity to retailers on the basis of long-term contracts. Large users will be able to contract directly with New Zealand Power. New Zealand Power or Transpower will decide on what generation should be dispatched. New Zealand Power will also be able to direct generators to use available capacity, thus removing the ability of generators to maximise short-term profits by withholding low-cost generation. New Zealand Power will cover all of its costs, including its electricity trading operations. It's not going to be a subsidy from the Crown. Finally, New Zealand Power will take on the majority of all current regulatory functions and powers. It will play a planning role, including for new generation. New Zealand Power will ensure that the long-term interests of consumers and our economy prevail. It won't just supervise the market, it will be actively involved. New Zealand Power will determine future investment needs for both generation and transmission. It won't plan the transmission, it's taking over the Commerce Commission's role. It will run a tender process for new generation and can sign long-term contracts with successful bidders so they receive a fair return on their investment. The World Bank report shows how commonplace this method is overseas. Generators and retailers will be structurally separated to encourage competition. Regulation of lines companies will be simplified. This will include a simple CPI-based pricing regime and a requirement to submit asset management plans for approval. These changes will achieve a low-cost, secure and sustainable energy system for New Zealand. Power bills will come down by $230 to $330 per annum for an average residential consumer. Commercial and industrial prices will also drop. Future increases from new generation will also be lower because the cost of the new will be averaged into the market rather than causing all prices to rise to the cost of the new. With more stable prices, businesses can also have more confidence to invest, and we'll see this flow through to more jobs and export earnings. This model will also help energy efficiency because New Zealand Power will consider energy efficiency alternatives that save energy or move demand peaks as alternatives to new generation. Economic advantages. We're all familiar with the disadvantages of being from a small country distant from others. This makes it all the more important that we use our advantages well, like our abundant, cheap, renewable energy. Fairer electricity prices will bring economic development advantages. These have been modelled by Burl, there's a copy of the report in your pack, at over 5,000 additional jobs and $450 million additional activity each year. New Zealand really is lucky. We're the lucky country with our abundant renewable electricity. Labor believes the government's role is to look after the best interest of all its citizens, young and old. In a country which produces low-cost electricity, the businesses and residents who use it should see those low production costs reflected in what they pay. Under this policy, they will.
Thanks, David, and thanks everyone for coming to this august chamber for this important announcement. The Green Party is providing all New Zealanders with a positive vision for a fairer, more efficient and greener energy future. Our plan is for all New Zealanders. Our plan will save Kiwis money and result in a greener energy system. Our plan puts the shared interests of all New Zealanders ahead of the excessive profits of a small number of shareholders. It's heartening that this vision is broadly shared with the Labor Party, and we're very glad to be here today to be making this announcement jointly. Critical components of our plan align neatly with the Labor Party plan. That is a really good thing. This means that New Zealanders can be assured that the Green Party and the Labor Party working together will deliver households cheaper power bills and are offering compatible, if not identical, policies. You could say that great minds think alike. We prefer to think that it highlights that the changes that are needed in the system are urgent and obvious. New Zealanders have been paying too much for electricity for too long. In the past 20 years, electricity prices in New Zealand have risen by 70% in real terms, so excluding inflation, while they have fallen on average by 6% across the OECD. The problem is that all generators are paid at the cost of running the most expensive power plants. Even though most of our power plants were built decades ago with public money and cost less than a cent a kilowatt hour to run, their owners pocket more than 10 times that amount. That's led to electricity companies increasing their valuations by billions of dollars, which in turn justifies further price hikes. And the price hikes are set to continue. Contact Energy is signalling more increases on the way in order to get larger dividends, and there will also be pressure from shareholders in any newly partially privatised electricity companies. All the major players in the electricity market are motivated by profits and higher prices. Governments and private investors have used the electricity market as a kind of stealth tax on our economy and have pocketed billions of dollars. It's time for someone to stand up for families and businesses who want a fair deal and cheaper power bills. It's time for someone to stand up for the environment and drive up the use of renewable energy. It's time for someone to plan for energy efficiency and coordinate the better use of the available power. Today, the Green Party is stepping forward. We are going to relegate excessive power profits at all costs to the past and build a better, greener electricity sector for the future. Our plan, which I'm launching today, called Empowering New Zealand, has 3 components that will deliver New Zealanders cheaper and greener energy. Firstly, we will establish a single buyer that will negotiate cheaper power prices for all of us. Secondly, we will deliver cheaper power by giving each household a block of low-cost electricity each month. And thirdly, we will strengthen the role of energy efficiency and green energy within the electricity system. The common centrepiece of our plan and the Labor Party plan is a new Pharmac-style agency named NZ Power that pools the buying power of consumers into a single buyer that will be able to drive harder bargains with the generators and pass those savings on to families and businesses. Ensuring affordable electricity for Kiwi families and businesses is more important than protecting the excessive profits of power company owners. NZ Power will work for electricity consumers, not for profit. If you think about Tiwai Point Smelter and the negotiating power that they have been able to exercise with Meridian Energy over many years, and multiply that power many times over, you can see the potential for significantly cheaper power. NZ Power will act in the common good to get the best deal for households. It will use its size and market position to deliver for ordinary New Zealand households. Businesses will also benefit from the lower wholesale price of power being passed on by retailers. But just getting cheaper power is not enough, unless it is shared equally. We believe our energy prosperity needs to be shared with all New Zealanders, not just the few who own a power company. Where National would deliver a profit, a dividend profit to shareholders, we will deliver affordable power to every household through allocating a low-cost block of electricity to households each month. The Green Party supports the introduction of a progressive pricing system to make NZ Power work for households. Under our model, we would require NZ Power to pass on the savings they negotiate in the form of a low-cost block of electricity to each household each month and lower prices to businesses. Our calculations would show that this would save families around $300 a year. Given that power bills have gone up on around $100 on average over the past year and have gone up over $300 since National came to power, that is a big saving for families. Delivering for families and businesses is important, but we also want to capture this opportunity to deliver for the environment. 100% renewable is within our reach. New Zealand is uniquely placed to move rapidly to near total use of renewables for electricity generation. We can also capture greater energy efficiencies in the system through more effective management of the power we already generate. We would mandate NZ Power to facilitate energy efficiency, and in their planning role work alongside power companies and local communities to move New Zealand towards a high use of renewables. The Greens Energy spokesperson, Gareth Hughes, and I have been meeting with lines companies, retailers and micro-generators to discuss other reforms to improve innovation, resilience and affordability in our electricity sector, and we look forward to doing much more in this area to deliver on the clean green potential. NZ Power would act in the interest of our environment by steering us towards a cleaner, greener energy future rather than leaving generation decisions purely to profit-hungry private companies. This plan means that New Zealanders now have a real choice about our energy future. Our vision is poles apart from the National Party's 20 years of market failure. Our vision is poles apart from the National Party's failed 20-year experiment. Ensuring affordable electricity for Kiwi families and businesses is more important than protecting the excessive profits of power company owners. The status quo delivers for the few, our plan will deliver for the many. The status quo disempowers the individual household. Our proposals empower households to collectively force the electricity companies to give us better prices. It's time for a better energy future, and we are committed to delivering it. Now I'd like to invite David and David back up, and we'll open the floor for questions.
There seems to be a discrepancy over progressive pricing. You want it, Labor, you say you're not completely sold on the idea. Which would it be if the Green Labor Coalition is
I think the fundamental thing is that the model that we have chosen to go with is the same. And the basic big differences are quite clear there in front of you. There are some areas that obviously we're going to differ on, and we're going to have to work on those, but they're at the margins as opposed to the big decisions around how we restructure our electricity sector.
So
I think you can see how, we developed these plans independently, and we found we had some very important common ground. There are some differences at the margins, but a key element of it is very recent.
So will progressive pricing go ahead or not if the Greens Labor Coalition?
We've said we're open-minded to considering it. It's true that there are efficiency benefits from progressive pricing, but it's not what actually decreases overall electricity prices. It's actually the move to the single buy model that drives the price down. Progressive pricing divvies up that between consumers in a slightly different way. It has some efficiency advantages, but for us some equity concerns as between wealthy and poorer people and people living in colder and warmer climates and those who have gas and don't have it. But we're happy to talk about it.
So did the Greens get it wrong then on progressive
We're not
pricing?
saying that.
No, of course not.
There's
It's just a different approach.
There's a different approach. Between different parties, you might take different views on those things about the equity efficiency trade-offs, and I think that's fine.
What do you think this policy will do to the market values of the shares that are not owned by the government?
Well, first of all, obviously, it'll take revenues out of these companies and it'll revalue the companies. In terms of the share price, that's really up to the markets. It's very difficult to
So what's it going to do to the profits of those companies overall? Not just the government, but privately owned ones.
They'll be down about 500 to 700 million as it's listed here, and that 500 to 700 million will be passed on to consumers.
So what would you say to the shareholder of Contact Energy or Trustpower whose value of their assets is going to fall because of the policy? What would you say?
Well, for the last 13, 14 years, that company has been making super profits, and the people who have been paying for those profits have been ordinary New Zealanders through their high electricity prices. We will ensure that there is a fair return, but it won't be at the super profit level that it currently is at the moment.
Would you expect compensation plans for those private investors for what you're about to do?
No more than compensation was paid to Telecom when some of their excessive profits were stripped out. You cannot justify overcharging people tomorrow just because you overcharged them yesterday.
The Commerce Commission came to a very clear conclusion that there was billions of dollars being transferred from consumers to the providers of electricity. We're going to be transferring a small amount of that back again because we think it's critical for New Zealand's energy future that households have affordable power.
Are you hoping to discourage people from investing in local power shares?
No, that's not the intention. The intention is to reconstruct the power market as it stands at the moment, so it delivers a fairer result and brings down power prices for New Zealanders. We cannot have power prices continuing to go up every single year when demand is actually flat or falling. That's not right and it's not fair, and it's time we did something about it.
Wouldn't it be simpler and fairer to renationalise the power sector? Because in a way, you've done it through regulation rather than
We're not renationalising. I don't accept the assertion that's in that question.
I mean,
what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be fair on private shareholders to actually renationalise the sector?
I come back to the principle, whoever owns them, they should only be able to charge a fair price. If it's not a fair price, then whether they're publicly or privately owned shouldn't make any difference.
How are you going to calculate what is a fair price? You talk about a monopoly giving generators a fair rate of return, but what's your idea of a fair rate? How would you calculate the asset base?
We won't be as tough as the Americans. The Americans would push them back to their historic cost and allow no adjustment for inflation. We land somewhere in the middle. It'll be for the regulator to assess what's effectively a fair return on capital plus paying their fuel and other operating costs. We've estimated that the saving will be $500 to $700 million in that region. That's not going to send them broke, but it makes a significant difference for consumers and takes back some of those revaluation gains that have come on the back of free water.
What's the message though you're sending to the New Zealand share market and investors by changing the rules like this potentially? What are they supposed to think in the future about decisions they make, investment decisions?
Look, the bottom line here is that for too long, power prices have been too high and continue to go up. The same shareholders will be our consumers of power. What we're doing is making it fairer for all New Zealanders in the same way as Dave just explained about telecom as well.
But what
I mean, the electricity market is already a very highly regulated market. It's not like, there aren't books and books and books of rules in this market. And it is the rules that determine who gets the money, essentially. So the rules have been written in the past to transfer wealth from households to the owners of the companies. What we're saying is we're going to significantly alter those rules to make sure that households get a better deal out of it.
So it's tough like for shareholders.
Well, we know that the Contact Energy has done extremely well, for example, under the existing rules. Under the change rules, there will be a better deal for households.
Why are you choosing to transfer the benefits of this to households rather than businesses, small and large?
Two-thirds of that $500 to $700 million will go to households. 1/3 will go across to businesses. Nobody will lose, either industrial, commercial, or residential. But the biggest benefit, if you like, will be the residential customers.
And business will benefit by residential customers having lower power. I mean, the work that Leighton and the Burl report, part of that is showing that the on-stream effects, or downstream effects rather, of lower electricity prices on households will be extremely good for the New Zealand economy.
One of the other technical reasons, Bernard, for that is that if you look at those graphs we put up earlier, no one can explain why the differential is so high between residential and industrial tariffs. And lots of people say that the reason for that is that there is less competition in residential and that therefore residential prices have suffered more than other classes. That's our assessment, and so that's the split we propose.
Aren't you returning to a central plan when it comes to new generation? Why would you expect the results to be any different than it was in the old pre-market days, which led in the end to blackouts in 1992?
Well, in the old days, that was the weakness of the original model, when everything was done by one party. But this proposes a transparent process with the regulator in the middle. I think we've learned from those days. There's plenty of other countries that manage to match demand with capacity using a single buyer model. You've got to be transparent about it. The bigger risk, according to MED when they looked at this in 2006, was not blackouts, it was overbuild. It was spending too much on too fatter generation margins rather than too little. So you've got to guard against that, but I don't see that as a killer for the idea.
What ramifications does it have for the incentive to build the next power station, given that we work on the current marginal cost? I mean, won't that mean the next power station has to be built at the average price?
No, what we'll simply do is tender for the construction of the next power company or power station. But it gives you also the option of a lot of other alternatives. Photovoltaic cells, for example, finding a way in which that can be brought out, increasing insulation in homes and therefore bringing down the cost and price of electricity. That also is a possibility in this system where it's not in the other.
I mean, the marginal wholesale cost will have to be set in a way that actually means that either you get new generation built or, as David's just said, you pay for energy efficiency measures. And that's one of the great benefits of this system, is you will have a major player standing in the middle of this market who has a vested interest in energy efficiency and has money to pay for it, in a way that we just don't.
So supply in this model, given how much the hydrology varies from year to year.
Well, you've got NZ Power sitting in the middle, and one of its jobs is going to be to look at the resilience of the system. That's going to be one of its mandates.
Yeah, that problem was well managed under the old system, and it will be under this. There will still be incentives in the contracts that the wholesaler writes with people who are buying power, that in the event you have a really dry year, you've got to drop off demand, or you price it higher. That's what currently happens, and that's what should happen in the future.
When you say someone has to tender for the next power station or the next generator itself, does that argue that they have
You need to explore by competition the cost of the new generation. You want to have a competitive bid for the next generation that's built, or the next energy efficiency. That report that we've referenced there, and we've got copies for it if people want it, is a World Bank report that looks at how this is run in many different countries around the world, big and small, and it can be done efficiently.
So contract couldn't just last ahead and do it, even if you thought it was going to be inefficient for NZ Power?
Well, it could, but it wouldn't necessarily have certainty of it being built, the power being bought for them, would they? So they probably wouldn't. You have to pay the new entrant the full cost of the new power station. You just don't let that power price be the price for everything that was built in yesteryear.
But by cutting the price, aren't you encouraging people to consume more power, and therefore potentially more power that might damage the environment?
Well, in our opinion, that's one of the benefits of progressive pricing, is you maintain the marginal retail pricing. That's one way. The price signal and maintaining the marginal retail pricing is one part of driving energy efficiency. But NZ Power will also have a vested interest in driving energy efficiency through the system, because the less power they have to buy from generators to sell to retailers, because they're driving energy efficiency down to retail, the better their negotiating position is with the generator. So that's what I like about it, is it means that NZ Power has a vested interest in driving energy efficiency, which is great.
Is progressive pricing a deal breaker for the Greens?
No, it's going to be one of the things on the table. I think, we obviously have a different view about it, and I think that's fine. We'll negotiate about that.
I think the remarkable thing, just coming back to your point, the remarkable thing is that we've been working independently on these policies, and just a few days ago realised that we were making announcements around it at the same time, and when we sat down and compared our policies, you saw the result. They are remarkably similar, and there's going to be some differences, but the fact that we've come to the same conclusion is the reason we're standing here today, because we believe power prices are way too high, and we can do something about it.
And just on the timing of this announcement, some critics will argue that it's an attempt to derail the asset sales program. What do you say to them?
No, it's not. The government obviously runs to its own timetable, and we've been working on this policy for a long time. We received the Burl report on Monday, and we decided to go out with it as soon as we could. We signalled to the market on Sunday. We've written to the minister in charge today. We can't be any more clearer. The prospectus sets out the possibilities of regulatory change. We can't be any more clear and fair than that. We're not dancing to the government's tune. We put our announcement out on Sunday regarding the fact that we're working on it. We then had some discussions, a chat to Russell, and so we
today.
We were planning to announce it today or yesterday. We decided that rather than having one on one day and one on the other, or one at 11 o'clock and one at 12 o'clock, it was a much better idea to actually do it at the same time, seeing we were pretty much on the same page.
The Labor was leading the way on this.
No, we were independently developing solutions to our electricity problem in our own offices, and came together and realised how close they were.
What's the role of Transpower in this new setup? Because the latest figures show a big chunk of the power price increase is actually due to wise changes.
Transpower's role won't change much. We're open to considering whether Transpower and Energy New Zealand should be the one entity. Haven't made up our minds on it. It does cause complexities around investment signals for Transpower, but you don't want them to overinvest either. In terms of that Transpower issue, there's an interesting issue that you raised there. When Transpower saw this increased cost coming at them because of their upgrades, they went to the Labour government and said, can we please stop paying dividends and start putting money in the bank? They started to do that, and then the National Party robbed the kitty.
What will this do to SOE Energy Company dividend strips the government? And how would that affect Crown fiscal position?
That slide there shows a rough breakdown. There's more detail in the papers that you've got, but it's effectively a cost of between $60 to $88 million to the Crown. That assumes that the 3 SOEs have been sold by the time of the election, which is obviously not what we want, but what they seem to be intent on pressing on with. It will be a bit higher if those other sales don't go through.
What's interesting about the fiscal position is that it's roughly about the same as the ongoing cost of National's asset sale program. The Treasury tells us in their budget policy statement that the impact of the asset sale program is roughly of the same order. So it means there's now a genuine choice and the cost is roughly the same. You can go to National's path where you privatise all the assets and have high energy prices, or you can go down the path suggested by Greens and Labour, whereby you have low energy prices and affordable power for New Zealand households.
What's to stop politicians who might be looking at balancing the books from directing dividends back towards the government via this central purchasing decision? What protections will you get in place? Because one of the criticisms of Labour in this last term was it didn't increase the dividends, it didn't implement price controls and bring power prices down. Why should
We did actually regulate lines. That was absolutely the most stupid part of the Bradford reforms, is they left the lines company an absolute monopoly, always a natural monopoly. This independent Crown entity won't be making a profit, so there'll be no dividends to return. It will be covering its costs.
We'll make it clear from the start that it's not designed to make profit, it's not there to make profits, it's not there to return dividends to the Crown. I mean, we put that in the statute.
What are the jobs? 5,000 jobs?
According to Bill, it's 5,000 to 7,500 jobs. It simply comes from putting more money back into the economy, boosting the economy, and that's their estimate in terms of what it will create in terms of employment.
And what happened with this agency?
Well, the agencies would stay pretty much the same as the electricity agency as it is at the moment.
This is a fairly major connection to a market. Are there other markets that you are paying for?
No, this is the big kahuna, really. But it's the issue that affects most people the most. And we believe we've gone through this up and down and back to front. We believe this is the right thing to do. I've just met too many people who have come into my office or come to see me who are suffering because they can't pay their electricity bill or have a trade-off between their rent and their electricity. I don't think that's right, and I think we're doing the right thing by this.
But in terms of your potential Labour government, you're signalling that you are going to be prepared to intervene in markets that take a different tack.
Where markets are not competitive and not working, then obviously we will take, the government will look to see how it can ameliorate the system. We launched a housing policy at the end of last year because the market is not working, certainly not working for affordable homes in Auckland. This is of a similar nature in the sense that we want smart, active government intervening where markets are failing.
Have you consulted with the electricity industry, the private sector?
No, although, to be honest, I've spoken with a number of former directors of SOEs who readily concede that the existing market isn't cooperative, isn't competitive. You know, I come back to that original point. Does anyone really believe the government was wrong to intervene with an uncompetitive telecommunications market? Does anyone really believe that we've got a competitive electricity market? If they do, then let's have an argument. Let's have an argument as to whether it's competitive.
One body that thinks it's competitive is the Electricity Authority, which yesterday was making its case by a number of metrics that the competitiveness of the sector had improved. Have you looked at that report and why?
I haven't read the latest report in the last few days, but it is true that elements of competition have improved. I don't deny that. It's also true that the market remains uncompetitive. It's also true that you're never going to be able to strip out that super profit being taken from water any other way.
Well, first of all, while criticised by some academics. But in any case, the authority
Proved
again
by
yesterday,
others.
the authority yesterday was arguing that the market had performed much better last year. It was the driest first half of the year on record than it had done, for example, in 2008.
Well, generation margins were better, that's why they went better.
I think if you look at the retail market in New Zealand, where there's barely one independent retailer of electricity in New Zealand, they're basically almost all generator retailers. So if there isn't one sign of market failure, clearly that is one of the signs that show that this so-called reform, the Bradford reform, just didn't work. We don't have independent retailers. And of course the reason is that the generator retailers force them out. If you have NZ Power sitting in there between the generators and the retailers, you actually create space for a genuine retail market in electricity that doesn't exist at the moment. And some of those retailers might offer innovative energy efficiency products. Some of those retailers might say, actually, what we're trying to do is serve our customers better. I just think that that is the clear signal that this has not worked, the fact that the retail market is basically not competitive.
How is the smelter, for example, smelter owners would argue that it's about 1 cent, sorry, $1 per kilowatt market, they say that's where that comes from. Does that mean effectively that smelter owners should expect a much better deal under this perhaps more like sort of $10 an hour rather than 40 an hour?
Well, I mean, major users will have the opportunity to buy from NZ Power. So, you know, well, most of the power from NZ Power will be sold to the retail companies and also consumers. However, major users, I think, do, you know, I would envisage that they have the opportunity to buy direct from NZ Power. But NZ Power is in a pretty strong negotiating position vis-a-vis the smelter, in a stronger negotiating position than Meridian.
I don't see much outcome being different for that. You know, one, the negotiation will be well and truly over before this comes into play. But there'll always be competitive pressures on both sides, and so there should be.
How is having one buyer, NZ Power, going to encourage micro-generation where people's put solar panels on their houses and that sort of thing? Because they have to negotiate with NZ Power.
They need to negotiate with NZ Power and the lines companies as well. I mean, it's not just an issue for NZ Power, it's actually an issue for the local lines companies as well. I mean, we've been meeting with the lines companies and, you know, they have some issues around the microgeneration and that kind of stuff, as we're all well aware of that phrase before. We would make sure that within the structure of NZ Power, we create a framework whereby microgeneration is part of the system and is enabled and allowed. Exactly what those rules will look like, we need to work that through.
Could you explain how you get the offsetting revenue increases and cost reductions from the government to offset the reduction in revenues from the facilities? So how do you get the extra money?
Well, it's a stimulus. I mean, you've got lower electricity prices, you're going to have a stimulus effect throughout the whole broader economy. That means you're going to get those jobs created, businesses will do better, and then you get better profits, and you're going to get